are so many sales teams still struggling, even with all the tools, training and templates out there? Because they have been sold a lie. A lie that more automation equals more revenue, that fancy slides close deals, and that sales is about pitching and not listening.
Because the people who are supposed to be working on selling and bringing in more new sales, they spend so little time selling. I still see so many sellers that do lame discovery. They're not really having conversations. They come across as pitchmen or pitchwomen, presenting too quickly.
Mike Weinberg is here to call BS on all of that. He's one of the most respected and unfiltered voices in B2B sales, author of Sales Truth, New Sales Simplified, and the recent bestseller, The First Time Manager.
But there are so many things that I see sellers do in their own behavior that damage how they're perceived. What I teach is what I did. I believe in my framework. I was top producer in 3 companies.
With over 4 decades in the field, Mike's mission is clear: to fix what's broken in sales, one team at a time. In this episode, we get into why presentation before discovery is sales malpractice, how sales managers waste 80% of their time, and what makes the best salespeople not more aggressive, but better at asking questions.
Like, you're talking to someone, you can tell by their voice and their tone and their lack of confidence that they're not even a business person yet. And yet we've entrusted them with this incredibly important task of getting meetings for these senior account executives. If I'm sitting with you and you figure out that I'm behaving a certain way in my tone or my body language because I'm doing it on purpose to manipulate you, will you ever trust me with anything?
If you're tired of fluff and ready for the real hard-earned sales wisdom, you will love this conversation with Mike. Let's go. Last time we spoke a lot about cold calling, that the phone is sexier than ever.
You have no idea how often I quote you, and I put a picture of you with the title of that episode that you said the phone is sexier than ever. It's an unused channel of communication.
Yeah, so I feel honored to be quoted by you. You're tomorrow going to a customer engagement. We're in Florida. I came all over from Europe. You came all over from St. Louis. Yeah. And we're meeting here in Fort Lauderdale.
What a treat. The fact that we were able to make this work, to meet here in Florida together. Yeah, this is absolutely my pleasure. So yeah, it's still sales kickoff season, Q1. So I'm running around. I'm not running around as much as I used to. I limited it, but yeah, I've got an engagement here in Florida, and then I'm off to Texas tomorrow evening. So I'm so glad this worked out.
So let's make the best out of the time we have together. A lot has changed since we spoke last time. You wrote another 2 books in the meanwhile.
Wow.
And in a lot of those books, also in the older books that you wrote, I read all of them. Some Sales Simplified I read I think 2 or 3 times. I'm using a lot of those ideas and concepts also in my sales approach back in my old companies when I worked for MongoDB and AWS. And what I hear you saying very often when I hear your podcasts, your keynotes, your workshops, your books, you say a lot of times sales is broken. When you say sales is broken, what is the biggest reason why sales is broken?
Oh my gosh, we could go. It's broken in so many ways, and so is sales management, which is its own conversation, which I think we'll probably get to. But in some senses, sales is broken because the people who are supposed to be working on selling and bringing in more new sales, which is my passion, right? Helping salespeople and sales teams win more new sales, they spend so little time selling. They're doing everything but selling. They're doing service work. They're playing customer success person. They're fighting fires. They're on projects. Post-COVID, now we have this new thing where we just set virtual meeting after virtual meeting up, often meetings that have nothing to do with revenue production. So in some senses, sales is broken because of lack of focus of sellers on the only 3 verbs that matter. It only took me like 2 minutes to get to that, but there are 3 verbs. Yeah. Create, advance, and close. And a lot of sellers don't spend time there. So that's one area it's focused, that's broken. And the other area is the constant need to speak, to present, to educate. I still see so many sellers that do lame discovery. They're not really having conversations. They come across as pitchmen or pitchwomen, presenting too quickly. They look like amateurs or vendors. We all want our salespeople to come across as value creators, right? Problem solvers, consultants. I think the pinnacle is the trusted advisor. But there are so many things that I see sellers do in their own behavior that damage how they're perceived. And they get downgraded to vendor or commodity seller. So there's a lot of ways that I think sales is broken.
Before we continue with the conversation, I have one little favor to ask you. If this conversation brings value to you, can you please hit the subscribe button down below so we can help to reach more sales reps and sales leaders like you every week? Thank you. There's a lot of ways how sales is broken. I always ask myself the question, what is the root cause? Like, what is the reason why sales is broken? And I think to me, the biggest one of the current reasons of the current zeitgeist, if you can use a German term.
I don't know that I could use a word that's that sophisticated, but okay.
But I think people got very impatient. People are very impatient.
Yeah.
We crave this instant gratification. We want things we want to have immediate impact and see results of our work. And in sales, you have the lag effect. This means you do something today, and it doesn't show any results maybe like in 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 months, 12 months sometimes even. Yes. And people think that they can get results quick by some easy sales hacks. The second part that you mentioned is that sellers are not spending enough time with actually selling, but they're spending time with administrative tasks. I heard I read a analysis by Salesforce, a report. Mm-hmm. They said only 30% of the seller's time is actually spent with customers. The other 70% is spent on administrative tasks, internal meetings.
I'm surprised it's that high. That's even 30%. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Those are probably people that are full-time hunters. Because I'll tell you what I see, people that are in the hybrid role where they manage existing accounts and they're supposed to pick up new business, those people don't spend 30% of the time hunting. They find excuses and ways to do service work or fight fires or collect invoices, anything but selling. So, you said something that made me think of something we touched on when we spoke a few years ago. Everybody is looking for the quick fix. What I will tell you today, I'm more thankful than I've been in a long time that a lot of the charlatans and the jokers in our industry, and there's no barrier to entry. Like to do what you do and what I do, you need an internet connection and a LinkedIn profile, right? There's no one stopping you. So there's a lot of people putting out a lot of nonsense, a lot of garbage that isn't credible, but it's popular because it's what salespeople wanted to hear. And I really feel like we had an entire decade where there were some loud, popular voices preaching what gullible, weak salespeople wanted to hear. If you just do this, if you just do this social selling thing, if you just tweet, if you just get an online brand and you hang out on LinkedIn and you comment, which is where you were talking about, in our first conversation about the phone and how important it is, and because there's a human interaction there. Well, and today with all the automation and the bots, and now everyone's talking about AI, the human touch, right? It's as important as ever. So the one thing I'll tell you I'm encouraged about is I see more people coming back to traditional methodologies. They're incorporating new tools and techniques. And AI is beautiful and powerful, and I'm very excited about what it can do for us. But I'm seeing more of the human touch and the creativity and the personalization and the contextualization, which is stuff that you were preaching about years ago, right? When you were making phone calls and you would say, all you hear is people in the office, clicking on the keyboard. So
yeah, it got lost a little bit. Yeah. We got soft a little bit. But you mentioned something very interesting, which I'm thinking about quite a lot. So you mentioned that there's a lot of charlatans out there. Today, everyone is a sales expert. Right. Today, everyone is a sales coach, sales trainer. He or she has been maybe 2 years in an SDR role or sold 2 years something and creates like a fancy website, does a fancy photo shoot. And the marketing is very, marketing does a lot. So if you market yourself well, then no one is questioning your competency, kind of. So the frame that people build around themselves is dangerous because people then believe that what you say is actually true, although you don't have the experience. You're regurgitating something that you read in the internet or from someone else, and you sell yourself like you would be an expert. And I think this is a very dangerous, I would say, dangerous development, because then people start applying those strategies by those charlatans. They are not working, and they say, hey, sales is not working, or sales is not for me. The question I would have for you is, how would you distinguish in this world of where everyone is in sales guru? How would you distinguish between, okay, this is actual legitimate sales advice of a person that knows what he's saying or she's saying, versus this is just some garbage
It's very
marketing
hard.
blah.
It's very hard. I'll give you a personal example. There's someone in our industry that I only knew casually online, and I followed them particularly closely on Instagram. And based on what this person was putting out online, I thought they had a very substantial business. If you saw the images and the videos and the meetings and the office and the studio and the crowds, and then I actually met that person and I got to see their setup and got to ask some questions, and it was all a facade.
Mm-hmm.
It was a public show. It looked good, but it was very well crafted. And it makes me very uncomfortable. It's very hard to tell online someone who's a poser,
Mm-hmm.
who's fake, who's putting on a facade versus someone who's really got the credibility. One of the things I would say is you have to look at their own career success. You and I,
Exactly.
and this is where we're so aligned. We're from different continents. We speak differently. We're different ages. You were a top salesperson. I was a top salesperson. We have stories. We have credibility. And as you're doing now, sales improvement, and you're helping so many people, you walk into a situation and it feels familiar to you because you've been there.
Mm.
And I can't tell you, I've been doing this a long time now. It's amazing how often I go into a company, I ask 3 or 4 questions, and then I go, okay, let me tell you what's happening. And they look at me like, oh, you've done this before. I'm like, yeah, I've done this like 20 times. And I would be very cautious of the people that have very short track records at their jobs, and they've been in the sales improvement world a very short time.
Yeah.
Because what's the proof? Where are the clients that have the stories of how you've turned around their sales performance? Anyone who's doing what we're doing should have firsthand success stories and case studies and just conversational comfort sharing. Let me tell you about this company. This is what they were doing when I met them. This is some of their sales struggles. Here's some things we implemented. Here was the result.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell a few of those stories, I will be very hesitant to pay you to help me just because you've got a brand online.
Exactly. Yeah. But brand is important. I mean, you have a brand as well. You are also known in German-speaking markets. I told you before, your books are people know your books there. So that's why a lot of my my audience, when I put on LinkedIn, hey, I'm meeting Mike Weinberg tomorrow. Oh, wow, that's awesome. You're meeting Mike. So you have a lot of fans in the German-speaking market as well.
Well, you have fans here too. And it's fun. I would not have made this trip. This worked out, right? I flew a couple hours out of my way, right? And made a drive for myself because you asked me. And I so enjoyed our conversation. And I have so much respect for you. And I'm excited to see the impact that you're going to be making. So, and I love coming to Europe. So somewhere, we're going to end up doing something together with a client, which would be great.
That's the next level. So let's take it step by step.
Sure.
So you mentioned one thing before. So how we distinguish the fake from the actual sales advice. I think we are weird in that way as human beings, because sometimes I think we want to get advice from someone that has the same problem as we have, and hasn't performed or hasn't had success in that field where we want to become successful. I'll give you an example. There are a lot of people that go to psychotherapy, and their psychotherapists have depression themselves, and they haven't been able to overcome depression themselves. So why do I go somewhere to fight my own depression with a person that is depressed themselves? So, and it's the same with sales. I'm going to a sales trainer or sales coach, and I pay him a lot of money because I want to improve my results. That's why my advice is how to distinguish between the fake advice and the real advice is, does the person or has the person produced the results that you want themselves or not? Does the person has a proven track record that they have multiple times repeated their success, and it was not just a one-off thing? And you can look in the resume. You can challenge the person. You can ask about those stories. But I think
100%. No, it's brilliant. As you're saying that, what's coming to my mind is what I teach is what I did.
Yeah.
I believe in my framework, my new Sales Simplified framework, and what I call the new sales driver, because it's what worked for me. I was top producer in 3 companies. So when I had to codify it and put it on paper and then sell it, it became a book, it became my lessons, I have no doubt that it works. And I've now replicated that hundreds of times in engagements. And if you're speaking to someone who wants to come help you with your sales, what are their frameworks and where have they worked?
Yes.
Because if it's somebody who bought a franchise who's teaching canned material. They're a highly paid facilitator that's inheriting someone else's content. It sounds good, but are you going to help me when are you going to roll up your sleeves and get dirty? Or are you just going to teach me what's in the book?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's really a big difference between people in our industry who get it. One of my favorite clients, who's now someone who works with me named Dennis Sorensen, he always talks about, are you going to get your hands in it? Even as a sales executive, are you going to be in the ivory tower?
Yeah.
Or are you going to roll up your sleeves and are you going to dive in with your people? Are you going to pre-call plan? Are you going to role play? Are you going to practice? Are you going to come up with objection busters? Or are you just going to be behind the scenes hoping that it works out?
Yeah.
So I think that's really a big differentiator.
Let's stick with the sales is broken quote a little,
Sure.
because you wrote a new book. Now it's the latest book is First Time Sales Manager. The book before was Sales Truth.
Yeah.
So you speak here a lot around sales truth in that book, of course. If your book is called Sales Truth, what is then, according to you, the biggest sales lie then that is told out there?
Well, the biggest lie was, and it's part of why I wrote the book, that traditional selling is wrong and you should not be interrupting people, and that marketing will do its job, and sales and marketing all became one messy thing. And if you do your marketing activities and you build your brand, that people will come running to you when they're 57% through their buying process. And that was a lie. And it actually led to a lot of business for me and a lot of my other colleagues, my friends, Jeb Blunt and Anthony Anarino and Mark Hunter, the guys that did the Outbound conference, because what happened was pipelines shrunk. Because if salespeople don't own opportunity creation and take responsibility for the top of their funnel,
Yes.
we're going to have a problem. And honestly, that was the biggest lie. And the theme of that book, and this bothers me, but I think that Sales Truth is my best written book. It's my book that sells the least.
Interesting.
I think as people, if they're looking for a sales book, they're going to buy New Sales Simplified because it's so much more popular and it's been around longer. But there's so much truth in Sales Truth about what does it take to become a master opportunity creator. And really my thesis in the book was the most valuable salespeople are not just waiting or chasing, they're creating. I think create is the most important of all the sales verbs. You're creating at the top of the funnel. Most sellers do not have a closing problem. They have a pipeline health and an opening problem. There's not enough going into the top, right? So one of the big lies was that you didn't need to create your own. I think we got through that. I will tell you, I don't know if it's a lie, but it's certainly a fallacy I see a lot today, particularly in technology companies with younger, less experienced sellers who have not been mentored. Also, many of them, their careers started just before COVID or in COVID, and there was a lot of demand for tech. So there were people in sales roles who made President's Club and put up really big numbers, but they didn't really have to create many opportunities. And they didn't really have to even work that hard on owning their process or process, as some of your European friends would say it. And they ended up just defaulting to being very compliant, very agreeable. They would be good at taking orders. If someone asked for a demo, I'm happy to do that for you. And they became, I don't know, yes men, yes women. And I think one of the great lies today in sales is that if you do what the customer tells you to do, you will score obedience points and you will win the sale. And from the challenger sale to all kinds of other research, we know that in the bigger, more complex deals today, the seller who wins is the one who pushes back, who reframes the conversation, who challenges, who plays consultant, not just vendor, order taker. And I see so many young or inexperienced sellers who think if the prospect asks you for something, the faster and kinder you do it, and you demonstrate, that you're responsive and you're compliant, that you're going to score points that will eventually add up to you winning the deal. And what I don't see happening is more mature managers mentoring and modeling what does professional consultative sales behavior look like. And I feel like there's a lot of people that they've been tricked into thinking they're good. But I've seen this the last couple of years, particularly last year. 2024 was a much harder year in sales than I think anybody expected. The tech slowdown was going on. There were headwinds, the interest rate, increases. But a lot of my industrial clients also really slowed down last year. And here in the US, it was a very contentious election year, and a lot of people just put the brakes on. And there are salespeople who have weak pipelines and whose results are struggling. And they have yet to wake up and understand that some of that is because they're not selling at a mature level. They're just playing order taker. They're following along. They're demoing first, asking questions later. They're not setting ground rules. And they have this mistaken belief that the customer, there's some law that the customer has the right to tell you what to do. And there's not this mutuality where we're on the level playing field. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, you said so many things right now. I need to structure my thoughts. What I would like to comment, and not challenge, but really comment, is the first thing you mentioned. Sales Truth is your least selling book.
Yes.
Sales Simplified is your best selling book.
Correct.
My hypothesis is that people want to have, again, the quick fix. They want to have it simple. And I think we, as human beings, we don't want to hear the truth. We want to hear what we want to hear. We are in this echo chamber where we want to have our own opinions being reinforced. Hey, yeah, you're right. Yes, you don't need to do cold calls. Everything is okay. Just keep on building whatever, relying on your SDRs, filling up your pipeline. So that's my hypothesis. Maybe that's why the title Sales Simplified is sexier for potential book readers, buys, whatever. The second part is set top of the funnel. These days, what I see is that a lot of senior sales reps, account executives, senior account executives, call it whatever you want, they got soft on, hey, I don't need to do my own cold calling. I don't need to fill up my own pipeline because, hey, we have SDRs. So the SDRs should do the calls. But top of the funnel is not something that you outsource to a junior sales rep. Top of the funnel is probably one of the hardest parts of the sales process because you need to kick in the doors. You need to convince executives or decision makers with eye to eye level, the way how you communicate, the experience that you have, the level of proficiency, industry know-how that you can bring to the table in a first conversation that an SDR cannot compensate for, cannot deliver with a tenure of 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. So I think there needs to be a combination of not just relying on your SDRs, BDRs, or some inside sales filling up your pipeline, but you as the sales rep, you need to roll up your sleeves and take ownership and responsibility for your own pipeline. And because people are soft,
yes,
and they want to, hey, I'm the senior account executive here. I've already done my cold calls. This should be done by someone else. They think they are too good to, or they are something better. They think I'm too experienced doing cold calls.
We have to stop here and just I would kiss you if I was not this far away from the table. Yes, you just articulated so much of what the challenge has been recently. And some of it is the fault of the salesperson who got lazy or complacent, or they feel entitled that you're going to drop leads onto a silver platter, whether they're inbound marketing leads or MQLs, or they're legitimate appointments set up by an SDR team. Like, how did we get there? And then so salespeople got complacent, but how about the executives that put these models into place? What kind of sales deployment model is this? If the top of the pipeline is the biggest challenge we have to fill it, what makes senior executives think that junior SDRs, you said it, with 6 or even 12 months of experience and almost no business acumen, are going to have a conversation with a senior level person at a prospect and convince them they should give us a half hour or an hour of their time? Like, you're talking to someone, you can tell by their voice and their tone and their lack of confidence that they're not even a business person yet. And yet we've entrusted them with this incredibly important task of getting meetings for these senior account executives. And then the account executives kick back and they complain that the SDRs aren't doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take on that?
My take on that is that I'm recommending customers or companies that I advise to do a twofold approach. I say, use the SDRs for booking appointments with all your long tail customers, long tail accounts, small accounts, SMB, where they can work with a lot of quantity, where they can burn all the leads, where they can learn the ropes of sales. And the pipeline generation for based on your the best accounts that you have, like your top leads that you want to
Yeah.
win over as customers. This is the job of the senior sellers. They need to come up with strategies, come up with the messaging, research the accounts, and then call up Mike Weinberg and convince him, hey, it makes sense to speak. Let's book 1 hour appointment. I think I can help to fix your problem.
Yeah, because you're credible.
Yeah.
Because you are a value creator and you've been there and
Exactly.
solved problems and you have stories to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an incredible burden to place on a junior person.
Yes.
That need that we have to get appointments.
Yes. So that's why I say this. Sometimes I even say, hey, I think you don't even need SDRs. Why you can do more with less, maybe, because today it's controversial what I will say right now. You still need the quantity, you still need to have the volume.
Yes.
But just more volume won't fix it. Because people are we don't have enough leads. We need to do more volume.
Well, and you're going down the path that we're all living in right now, right? More volume. What the need for more volume is what resulted in all of this automation, all of these bots. My LinkedIn mailbox is unusable.
Yeah.
It's filled with fake accounts and spam or pathetic pitches that all feel automated. And you've seen this, and it's fun because you were saying it 3-4 years ago. Today, prospecting has made a comeback even for senior people. If you look at who's popular on LinkedIn right now and the message that they're sharing, it's about the phone. And it's about how AI, in some ways, and automation has destroyed email marketing as a mechanism because you don't know what's real and what's not. And between email and LinkedIn, and I get hundreds of messages a month in my public email address and in my LinkedIn account. And I'm always telling people this when I do a workshop. I get hundreds of electronic messages. How many phone calls do you think I get in a month from a salesperson? Like if I'm on all these lists, everybody wants me to sponsor or affiliate or promote their product.
Come to a podcast.
So if I get 200 emails or LinkedIn messages soliciting me, how many live phone calls do you think I get from a human salesperson who picks my phone number's on the website? How many do you think we get in a month? If I get 200.
Two.
Too high.
0.
0.5. Every 2 months, I get one phone call.
Every 2 months you get one.
One phone call. And do you think that salesperson ever calls back a second time and leaves me a second voicemail? Almost never. And my rule is, if you're good and you have quality messaging and you tease me with a value nugget and it looks like you did some research, if you leave me 2 or 3 messages, I feel like you've earned the appointment. I'll call you back and I'll be curious. But nobody calls, and those that do aren't persistent.
Yes.
And it's so mind-boggling to me, especially because I teach this. I mean, it's scary.
I have now a bit of a controversial question for you. I need to see how I can put this.
How are you going to couch this? Yeah.
How I can put this delicately. So you have seen a lot in your life. So you've been in sales for quite some time. You are now doing the sales enablement for quite some time.
Gray
you
hair.
have quite some more gray hair than me. Yeah. And let's put it like that. So you've done and seen a lot. The world is changing, sales is changing, customer behavior is changing, and I'm always asking myself the question: which old sales advice is no longer working? Do you think that there are still there are some methodologies, strategies, advice like, hey, always be closing or into do this and that is no longer valid today?
Yeah, I would say the fundamentals haven't changed. The basics are the basics, and I'll run through my little framework. If you do 5 or 6 things well, you're going to win in sales.
Yeah.
But things that feel at all inauthentic or manipulative, people run from you faster than ever.
Yeah.
Even if you're a highly skilled, highly trained seller, when prospects perceive that you're doing a maneuver, or you're saying something intentionally to manipulate them like you're acting. There is a sales training organization based in the States that actually teaches salespeople to act a certain way so the customer feels a certain way. And I see that and I want to vomit. I mean, who is going to trust anyone? If I'm sitting with you and you figure out that I'm behaving a certain way in my tone or my body language because I'm doing it on purpose to manipulate you, will you ever trust me with anything? I think that's like the death knell from an integrity perspective. So I think the old methodologies that feel manufactured are gone and dead. But in terms of the fundamentals, strategic targeting, compelling customer issue and outcome focused messaging, securing meetings, running good consultative or consultative conversations, sales calls, you call them prospect or customer meetings, where we only talk 1/3 of the time. Right? This is biology, anatomy.
Yeah.
2 of these, 1 of these.
Yeah.
So good structure where we position before we probe and we probe before we present. That's all the same. Presenting with power where we're tying what we learned in discovery to the customer's frustrations in their current state or their desired future state. We've learned they have this problem they want to solve. They have this outcome they want to achieve. They're looking to mitigate this risk or minimize a liability or drive a certain result. If you can articulate those when you're presenting early on, you change the whole dynamic. All of those principles, I would say, very much still apply.
Yeah.
It's the things that feel produced or manufactured, I think, that have gone away.
Can you give an example? So do you mean like those old school closing techniques
yeah,
kind of
traps,
things, or?
traps and closing techniques, and like you said, always be closing, right? Well, in a sense, that's good coaching. But my friend Anthony would say, he's got a book, I forget the exact title, but about getting the commitments to gain the sale.
Yeah.
We should always be trying to secure and schedule a next step. We should always be checking in. Are we on the same page? How does this align? How do you feel? My understanding based on what you share with me, a lot of times I'll say, based on our conversation, what you shared, I really feel like this makes good sense for you. This is a fit. Tell me how you see it. What do you think? That's just a good conversation to check someone's pulse.
Yeah.
Are we tracking towards a good next step? So those things I think are still valid, but it's when there's a little twist or someone feels like you're asking them a question that there's no out of, like you just handcuff them. That's over.
You know what struck me during this conversation so far? How often deals are lost not because of product or price, but because something critical was missed in the conversation. And that's exactly where tools like Kickscale come in. Kickscale uses AI to record, transcribe and analyze your sales meetings and shows you what really happened. What parts of MEDDIC were covered? Where did qualification fall short and which questions should you ask next time? It even syncs with your CRM and gives your reps real-time coaching so you don't just review calls, you actually get better with everyone. And the results speak for themselves. Teams using Kickscale see up to 27% higher win rates just by closing the gaps that are hiding behind plain sight. As a listener and viewer of the show, you get an extended free version with 20 recorded meetings absolutely for free. Check out the link in the show notes and get your access to Kickscale today. Let's get back to the episode.
That's why I think that what I heard immediately reminds me of a very short term, or let's say a phrase: sales kills sales.
Say that again.
Sales kills.
I've never heard it said
sales.
that way. I can't believe that's so good.
Sales kills sales,
Yes.
and the rationale behind it is that salespeople or sales teams are trying to apply a certain methodology, certain technique. For example, now outbound on LinkedIn, or a specific cold calling script, or a cold calling opener, or something. I don't know, some type of methodology. The more they apply it, the more customers become, let's say, not reluctant, but maybe immune to it. They sense, they spot the pattern. Oh, I heard that cold calling opener, or that I've seen that email opener.
Immune, that's a great word. They become
immune
immune.
to that, or they've heard this manipulative question and discovery already 10 times, and their crocodile brain is telling them in a millisecond, okay, I've seen that, there's a pattern, that is a salesperson, and they get labeled as a salesperson. Now, then the consequence of that is that all those methodologies, techniques, scripts are working less and less and less. This means the productivity of the sales teams is going down. And what does the sales leader do? Okay, we need to increase the volume of the things that are no longer working that effectively, which means that the cycle becomes faster. It works less and less, then they are still trying to increase the volume, and it becomes a kind of vicious circle, so to say. That's why sales kills
Sales kills sales. You're making me think of something I said in New Sales Simplified, but I almost never get to talk about it. And I was referring to the reality that buyers have a resistance to salespeople because of the things you just described. They become immune, and they get tired of having their time wasted or being manipulated. And the way I say it to salespeople is, it's not necessarily your fault, but it is your problem.
Yeah.
You didn't create the situation. The waters were poisoned before you got here by other either low ethics, low integrity, or manipulative, or some type of technique. Before you, those salespeople ruined it. But you have to swim in those waters. So we want to do everything possible to not sound and act like the stereotypical salesperson, because you're looking for the human connection.
Yeah.
We had this conversation. This was the flashback to why you said the phone was sexier, because there's a human involved.
Yeah.
And so much of what I see in sales today, and so much what hasn't worked the past 5 years, as you've talked about, because of the pressure for volume and automation, it's taken the human element out of selling.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for a buyer, even a senior executive who needs help, to resist the electronic efforts or the process. It's much harder for them to resist a value-dripping salesperson who sounds like an expert and who's authentic and empathetic and cares.
Yes.
Night and day.
Yes. And that what connects also to what you said before. Earlier you mentioned something like that the basics are the same. The fundamentals are the same. Now, if we come to the conclusion that sales kills sales by doing more of that is no longer working, and then what's no longer working is working even less and less and less effectively. If we deconstruct sales into its basic fundamentals, if we deconstruct it to the first principles, so to say, I can create a new framework, I can create a new cold calling script, better questions, different email messaging that still works, but is different and doesn't trigger this, I've seen it, I've heard that, it's a salesperson, I don't want to speak with you. And really being a student of psychology, being a student of sales, being a student of human nature, how humans are doing decisions, I think sales is you're a hobby psychologist.
Hobby psychologist, yeah. Well, you used a word a minute ago that's really important, and it gets overlooked. Creativity. You're putting your human touch. There's some artistry.
Yeah.
There's some care. It's more than a science. There is clearly art involved here. And how you customize your approach, even your own voice tone, and what words you choose. Wordsmithing, I think, is very important. Not for manipulation, but how are you perceived? Particularly if the buyer is throwing up defenses immediately to some pitch. It's why it kills me when sellers lead with their product or their company. Because it's completely self-focused. And my question always is, so what? What's in it for the customer? Where's the value? What's the problem you're solving? What's the result you're helping them achieve? They got challenges. They're under pressure, but you got to say things that are relevant. And if you understand those things because you've studied them and you're helping clients every day with these challenges, you come across as credible and trustworthy. And who doesn't want help solving a problem or achieving a result?
Yeah.
But that's very different than putting it in the machine that's automating and spitting out messaging, or, using techniques that are just anathema to the people that are receiving them.
If you say that there's some artistry to sales, there are two, I would say, types of opinions out there. One say, hey, either you are a born seller and you know how to sell, and sales is kind of an innate ability. And another extreme is sales can be learned. Where on the spectrum are you?
Oh, I think it's both. It's not or. And I'm going to give you an example that's real life. My podcast episode that's releasing this week is a very unique one. I interviewed a woman who I'd never spoken with before. I did a kickoff meeting for her company a year ago. Very simple new sales simplified workshop. It was probably 5 or 6 hours. And she put a post on LinkedIn somewhere late last summer that she had achieved her quota for the year and was setting records for herself. She had been a very good salesperson, always made her number. She was very good. I taught some of the most simple concepts. She picked 3 or 4 of things that she heard from me about. Sales is noble. I have my best customers' interest at heart, so I should be more assertive. I need to take back control of my calendar and spend more time creating, advancing, and closing, less time servicing. I need to simplify my customer meetings and say less, ask more, and not demo everything because people are overwhelmed. She just shared 3 or 4 things. And it blew my mind. So I said, I want to interview you. And I just sent her one email, said, I just want to interview you. We got on with no prep. And I said, tell me why you had a breakthrough. Well, what came out of the conversation was she had been quite successful in the past. My training did not make her a great salesperson. She took a couple simple concepts and experienced crazy breakthrough where she hit her quota in the summer and then had a record sales performance year. So I think that's a good example of it's both. She had the natural DNA and the fit and the love of business and sales. And with a little tweaking, I mean, I didn't give her a ton, I gave her little stuff, and she turned those little nuggets and adopted them and had a breakthrough. So I see that all the time. I think there is something I will say though, and I'm going to tie it to what you and I are experiencing with clients right now in the world. It's still very hard in tech. The headwinds are significant. It has been 2 or 3 hard years. And there are people who made a lot of numbers and put up big results that are now really struggling. And as I've gone deep, I had a few deep engagements last year with tech companies. And what's interesting is it started out as basics of sales management and helping managers do better accountability. But what quickly rose to the surface when they started doing really good accountability, looking at results and pipeline health and then activity, these managers were faced with the reality that their people, A, didn't have the skill, and many of them were not equipped from a DNA perspective. They were wired as peacekeepers or as account managers or glorified customer success people. And they did great when the SDRs or the inbound marketing was putting a very high volume of qualified leads on their plate.
Yeah.
But when that dried up, those very same sellers, not only did they not know how to go out and get appointments, but some of them didn't want to. And the thing is, you go down this path, are sellers born or made? The thing I will tell you that I think is the death knell for a salesperson is if you're conflict averse. If you're afraid of conflict and you're so quick to acquiesce because you don't want to make somebody else uncomfortable, you don't want to push. And part of my message to sales leaders and HR, human resources people, is could you stop with your flowery job descriptions where we're looking for these collaborative team players? No, I want freaking sales killers, people on the front line who don't take the first no for an answer. Like when you're prospecting and you interrupt somebody, the automatic reflex response is, no, I'm good, I'm set, unless you call someone the day that they're shopping because they have a problem. If you interrupt them, the automatic, I don't care how good your story is, how good your voice tone is, the automatic reflex answer is, no, we're set, we're fine, thanks anyway. And if you turn right there and go, okay, well, I'm sorry I bugged you. I'll try you again in 9 months to see if you're not happy then. You're going to starve. Like that's conflict. You have to push past and go, I hear you. Let me share one more thing with you. We're helping a lot of executives who are struggling with A or they're under pressure to achieve B. If that's on your radar, we should visit for a minute or two. There's some good messaging there, but there's also the stiffening of the spine, the willingness to engage. Or if you're trying to dislodge an incumbent, you're down the path and you're trapped with one stakeholder and you realize I better meet other influencers in this prospect's organization. If you're scared of conflict and you're worried about offending the person, you won't even ask for the opportunity to meet other people. Yeah. Right? Or later on when it's negotiating. It's lack of willingness to engage in conflict shows up so many places, and I'm fearful. There's a lot of people, particularly young people in sales, who did well for their first 5 years that we're now finding out not only do they not have the skills to hunt because they didn't have to because demand was so strong, but they're also not wired to do it. Yeah. And I'm curious for your reaction because I'm scared a little bit. I'm seeing performance really struggle. Yeah. And when I'm pulling back the covers from doing good sales management engagements, I'm nervous about sales talent.
I think a good salesperson is a person that has some, has an excitement of hunting for something. Hunting and chasing something, not like in terms of maybe like a wild animal is chasing some antelope or something, not killing it, but in terms of, hey, I want to achieve something. I want to go after it, and I'm not shying away of conflict. And I think it ties very well to what you said before. You said that consultative selling means that there must be healthy conflict. Yes. If you want to be a consultative seller, you are not just an order taker, how you said, but if you're a consultative seller, what consultation means? Consultation means I'm bringing you a new perspective, and I can only bring a new perspective if I'm challenging your beliefs. Now, if you want to sell to an executive, C-level, VP, whatever, those are people that are achievers, alpha guys or women, alpha women, that want to get challenged. They respect you if you challenge them. And if you understand this, that people that are in charge, people that are in higher up positions, want to get challenged, and they respect you if you challenge them, and you can withstand that pressure, that there is some healthy back and forth, some healthy discussion, then it will open up the doors for much bigger deals. It will open up the doors for you to elite level selling. And because people think that sales is more like a servant, or it's like, sales is serving in a certain extent, but they see themselves like a waiter asking for still or sparkling. Instead of coming to the table in a restaurant, and if I order, hey, I want to order this soup, and as a main dish, I want to order this steak, not saying, okay, great, but you want to order this soup, I would rather recommend you that main dish because it goes better with that wine, or it goes better with that soup, Like challenge and bring insights. Okay, interesting. I might listen to that guy, right? So I think people forget. People think that they are waiters in a restaurant asking for still or sparkling.
Order taker, value creator. They're not the same person. But you also, let's just go back a second, because you made this incredible point too about why, for the right salesperson, it's actually easier to sell higher up in the customer organization.
Yeah.
You went down that path. You talk about the alpha woman, the alpha male. What does that person want? They want a partner. They want someone who's going to help them achieve their objectives. The joy, and people like you and I understand this. The average salesperson hasn't experienced success selling to the corner office. This is a new idea for them. They tend to be intimidated. They're terrified to go talk to the executive. And what you and I know is that when you get there, you find nicer people, smarter people, and people that want your help.
Yeah.
They're not trying to take your last nickel and negotiate like the lowest price. They want to win. They've got a big objective they're trying to meet. They got a big problem they're trying to solve. And if you crack in with good messaging and care and human and willingness to push them and challenge them, they respect you.
Yeah.
And that is consultative enterprise selling.
Yeah.
And that's where the artistry comes in, and there's not enough of that today.
That's the artistry part. I would like to touch upon on a different topic with you, that you are very passionate about as well. A term that I am hearing you saying quite often is, let me remind myself, you say something like, presentation before discovery is sales malpractice. That's what you are saying quite often. Of course, you're referring to the fact that you should do your discovery before you start pitching. Just before we hit record, you said that most salespeople are fast into demoing, demo, and then they ask some questions, just ask questions. So asking questions, understanding the customer is important, because if you don't do that, you're just throwing things on a wall and hope that some of your spaghetti will stick on the wall, right? That's why you say presentation before discovery is sales malpractice. Yeah. How do we break that circle that salespeople are stopping pitching, stopping speaking about the features, and starting to slow down, to speed up the process? What do you mean by slow down? Slow down in terms of, hey, we have a first meeting with your customer. The objective of this meeting is not to show you my product or demo, whatever we have to do, but really understanding your situation to see if we are a fit and how we could help you. What do we need to change? Is like a mindset shift? Is an enablement shift? I just don't understand why people...
It's very hard. And the marketing people don't help, because a lot of the tools the marketing people are creating are about our product and how to present quicker and better. But you said something so critical a second ago. You said we need to slow down. And everyone who's had sales success understands that very often, to speed up the sale, you actually slow down how you sell. You take your time, you learn more on the front end, so you're more compelling when you're presenting and you're proposing. You're winning the deal by the relationships you're creating and the work you're doing on the front end to learn what the customer needs. And so you can tie your presentation and what you're proposing to what you've learned in discovery. Some of that learning happens before you even get to the customer. And yes, there's discovery in the meeting, but there's discovery you do through the research beforehand. So that's a whole interesting conversation. You ask, how do we help salespeople understand this? I use a ridiculous analogy, or maybe it's a metaphor. I never get those words right. When I'm teaching a workshop and I talk about the importance of good structure, in the States, we call it a sales call. You call it a prospect or a customer meeting, right?
Yeah.
But it's when you're, and usually it's face-to-face. Could be online, virtual, but usually in the old days, it was face-to-face, where you're having an early stage meeting. You may get to presenting here, right? But you may not. You're not sure. It may make sense after you've had some dialogue to show someone, at least tease them, even if there'll be future meetings with more detailed presentations. So I use this bizarre analogy, metaphor. Imagine you have an illness and you're going to a doctor and you're a little nervous because you don't know what's wrong with you. And you go to this doctor that's recommended, and you sit there, in the examining room, and you're waiting on that table with the white crinkly paper. I'm sure you have the same white crinkly paper in Europe that we have here.
Yeah.
And you're getting uncomfortable, and finally the doctor walks in, and you expect maybe 30 seconds of small talk. And then the doctor is going to say something like, well, tell me why you're here. Let me examine you, do some diagnosis. But let's say that doesn't happen. The doctor walks in, and instead of just a small talk, the doctor takes 5 minutes and starts telling you about her background and why she went into medicine and where she went to university to do medical school, and then where she did her residency. And then she tells you about her office and why it's decorated the way it is and how wonderful. And she shows you her degrees, and you're like, this is really odd. And then you think, okay, now she's going to tell me, well, take your shirt off and, I'm going to examine you and tell me why. She doesn't do that. She then goes over to the little cabinet where they keep the sample drugs, and she pulls out a little bottle, and she says, I really think this is going to help you. This is a wonderful drug. It's a wonder drug. I've studied the results from it, and I followed the manufacturer, and I looked at all the trials. This is helping a lot of my patients. I really want you to have this. And she writes the prescription and says, go take this drug. And I tell the story, and people look at me like, that is so stupid. You would never accept that type of medicine from somebody. That would be medical malpractice, where you're prescribing before you're doing diagnosis. But then I stop and I go, how many of us, that describes a little bit of what our meetings look like, where we go in pitch mode, and we have the demo queued up, and we have our slides with awful slides include pictures of our buildings and logos of our clients and org charts and company chronology and then unique processes, all this self-focused mumbo jumbo garbage. And then we start pitching. I'm like, how do you even know what you're tying it to? So what I would argue is the way to get over this problem, because I hate it, because I would make the case you cannot be viewed as the consultant or the advisor if you walk in and you're yapping or you're so quick to demo. Keenan said it in Gap Selling. It's a cool book, and Keenan's brilliant. He goes, his answer is real simple. No discovery, no demo. And I know that we have to reduce friction, and buyers are tired of being manipulated. And I'm not saying we make someone jump through 19 hoops and we tease them to death and never show them what we got. Like, I'm not advocating that. But mutuality, dialogue, and my dad gave me some advice a long time. He goes, you could tell a prospect that wants you to come and do a presentation prematurely. You could say, I could present to you for 9 hours. In order to make this next 30 minutes valuable, why don't we spend 15 with you telling me what's going on? And why am I here? And what are you looking to achieve? And what are some of your biggest struggles? And what does victory look like for you? And then that'll help me on the fly. I'll be creative, and I'll show you what makes most sense. But if you go with this pre-programmed thing, how could you possibly be viewed as someone who consults? Because at that point, I'm going to say this in a very derogatory way, aren't you nothing more than a trained circus animal who's performing a rehearsed trick? Like someone's going to give you a little treat? Doesn't make any sense. That's not sales. That's something else.
Yeah.
One thing that keeps coming up in this conversation, and honestly in every high-performing sales org, is the need for a structured and repeatable system. Most deals don't fall through because of the product. They fall through because we missed something critical. We didn't quantify the pain, we never reached the real economic buyer, and we thought we had a champion, but we didn't. Why? Because there's no scalable sales system in place. And that's exactly what I train sales teams on with the software sales formula, on structured frameworks like Medic and Discovery, not just to tick the boxes in a CRM, but to understand how to run a deal in the right way, from discovery with systems to close with clarity and control. If you want your team to stop losing deals, they should be winning. then check out softwaresalesformula.com. It's softwaresalesformula.com, or check out the link down below in the show notes. And now let's get back to the episode.
You remind me of something. You know what I'm doing discovery trainings as well a lot. So one part of my methodology or the things I train is discovery. And to create like an analogy, like an aha moment at the beginning in a training, I do something very similar, but I do it even more drastically. So when I go to a customer training, I go to the pharmacy the day before, and I buy an injection, like a proper, and with a needle.
Really?
And I buy saline, saline. And I start the training.
This is really good.
I'm not saying anything. I just go to my backpack. I just take the saline and I unpack the needle. I put it on the injection. I put it into the saline. I put the saline into the injection, and then I hold it up to the audience and I ask, "Hey, who can you make us a free? I would like to give you the needle here." And everyone is like fucking scared because I'm open. I'm actually showing them a needle with the saline. They don't know it's saline. They say maybe it's some, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Poison or something. And everyone is super scared. And then I say, imagine that you're at the doctor's office. You're called up. You enter the doctor's office. You enter into the room where a doctor should be. You go to the room, there's no doctor. You look around, there's no doctor. And all of a sudden, the doctor is hiding behind the door and he puts the injection into your butt. What would you say to the doctor? Something like, hey, I don't know, fuck you or something like that, right? Or are you crazy, right? And it's the same analogy. And then I ask.
I like your story better than mine. Yours is more colorful.
Then I ask them, okay, now, what does the doctor need to do or say so he can put an injection into your butt?
Oh.
Where does it hurt? What's the problem? Why are you here? What symptoms do you have? And then, hey, I have this injection, it will help you. Then you will very graciously let the doctor put the injection into wherever he wants to put it. But after he asked you the question, where does it hurt? And it's the same how we behave in sales. We want to give the customer the injection without understanding his actual illness.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's funny. It's very similar.
You and I are separated by a big ocean and 6,000 miles between us. And we're saying the same thing. And we're seeing the same pathetic, amateurish, unprofessional sales behavior that's forced us to tell stories like this with such dramatic analogies to wake salespeople up that what they're doing is not effective.
Yeah.
I'm hoping the sellers that are hearing this and their leaders that are listening, if you have salespeople doing this, you've got to stop them. And the thing that kills me, they come across like every other salesperson. Part of why I think sellers are ineffective and they get commoditized and treated just like a supplier or a vendor, and they get lumped in with everybody else, is because they don't differentiate in how they sell. They come across exactly the same as everybody else, and there's no creativity, there's no effort. They just sound, they look, they smell, they dress,
robots.
They use the same words,
Sales
the
robots.
same slides.
Sales clothes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's nothing premium about that sets them apart.
Yeah, there's no artistry in that, I think. And Erling Nightingale, I think it's an American author, right?
Sure.
Erling Nightingale. Yeah. He said something like, I'm not sure if I can reconstruct the quote, but it's something like, if you do in any given situation, the exact opposite of what everyone else is doing, in 80% of the cases, you will get better results.
Wow. I've never heard that. I'm going to go research. That's so powerful. I believe it because people are bored and they're tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have a chance of standing out where you can actually be a value creator and make a difference.
If you dare to do something different and just, don't do what's expected, but do something that is unexpected. Because again, if you go back to psychology, we got so immune to things that are ordinary, that are every time the customer gets the feeling that this is expected, this is ordinary, this is not new, it's not dangerous, he's not even listening to you. So we need to pass this filter of this crocodile brain of, okay, this is either dangerous, it's totally unexpected, it's out of the ordinary, or it's completely new, and then customers are listening to you. And that's why this quote of Earl Nightingale, I think Earl Nightingale is so powerful. I would like to cover one more topic with you, because we could speak about this for ages.
I'm guessing what it is too.
We are rambling around. We won't be speaking about sales management, but there is one thing I want to ask you is, you are quite known for no BS sales advice. I think you are saying truth, sales truth, speaking truth.
Trying.
I think people that speak the truth, people that say out loud what they think, people that are challenging the status quo, people that are saying the unfamiliar are often challenged. They are often criticized. So what's that's the most unpopular opinion that you have about sales, where you get the most pushback?
Wow. I need to think about that. I have one of top of mind that's sales management, which I'll weave into this because it's relevant. But from the sales perspective, the thing I say that's most unpopular,
Yeah.
I'll say this one. It's not about being liked as much as everybody wants to think that it is. There are a lot of really high-performing salespeople that are difficult to be around.
Mm-hmm.
They're high maintenance inside their company. They're relatively demanding. They're critical of a lot of things. And then sometimes they even rub the customer a little bit the wrong way. But they control it enough where they're likable enough, but they win the deal over nicer, kinder, more likable salespeople because they find the real issue. They meet more people. They tell a more compelling story. They deliver more value, and they're more credible. And that's not a popular thing, because the old expression is people buy from people they like, or people they like and trust. Yeah. And we should be likable, and relationships do matter.
Yeah.
I know the Challenger sale said, it's not as much about the relationship. It's more about value. But all things being equal, relationship wins.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the reality. But I just think people are too concerned with being liked more than they are with being respected or winning. Dave Curlin has had an influence on me. Dave Curlin wrote a book called Baseline Selling, and I interviewed him 10 years ago for a client that was struggling with salespeople that wanted to be liked. And he refers to this thing called need for approval. That salespeople that want to be approved of by their customers tend to fail.
Yeah.
He jokes, if you want to be approved of, get a dog. Get someone who will love you unconditionally, but don't look for that from your customer. Yeah. You have to have enough self-esteem and respect for yourself. So that's what I would say is the thing that's probably not very popular. Because we don't ask the right questions, or we don't push past resistance, or we default to the customer's goofy process instead of challenging. And the salespeople that I see crushing it, they own their own process and they push. But can I bring one more piece in? I know we're not going to go down a sales manager path, but this is what's driving so much business to me today, and it's such a great concern I have. I see senior leaders in organizations that have lost sight of what the sales manager's job is. And this is a very unpopular thing that I'm saying, because I'm basically turning over the tables, yelling at C-suite executives that you're hiring people like me to come in and help you increase sales management effectiveness. But every day you drag your sales managers to virtual meetings and send them dozens of emails, and there's an initiative or a flavor of the day, and you never give them the time to go do their main jobs, which I would argue are accountability, making sure that people do their job, and then coaching, helping their people get better at their job. So part of my mega frustration today is not just that sellers are being too nice, or they're doing service work and they're not focused on creating, advancing, and closing, particularly, as we said earlier today, creating. But on the sales management side, the person who is the most important person in the revenue organization, the frontline manager, is not doing their primary job, holding their seller accountable to do their job, sticking their results and their pipeline under their nose, and they're not making time to coach and develop their people.
Yeah.
And that has led to some of the problems you and I are articulating about amateur selling and lack of funnel. And it's a mess. And it's not popular, but I feel like, and I'm in a position where I can say it, but we've got to get people in the corner offices back on board with what is the job of the salesperson and what is the job of the sales leader.
How I would comment it is that you get hired because sales managers or sales leadership says, hey, our sales team is not performing, let's get Mike in so he trains the salespeople. In Germany, we have a saying translated to English, it would translate something like, the fish starts to stink from the head.
100%. I've heard that. That's really good.
And in sales, the fish also starts to stink from the head. So the problem is not, I mean, it can be the salesperson, but you as the sales leader, you have the ownership and accountability to train the right people, to hire the right people, to train them and to hold them accountable. And you cannot outsource it to Mike Weinberg or to Jiri Siklar or to Jim Keenan or whatever sales trainer you want to hire, right?
That's right.
You can get help from someone like you or me, but you need to then have the right tools, processes, mindset, and perspective and skills yourself in place as a sales leader, and time, and invest the time. That's what you mean. Invest the time in developing people, and not just relying on someone else to do it for you to develop great sales teams.
I am 100% in agreement with what you just said. Absolutely.
Yeah. I have a final question to you. Like last time I asked you a different question, but for every guest I have a different final question.
Should I be nervous about this?
No worries. Nothing medical or something. So we skipped the doctor already. You're passionate about sales. You're doing this for decades, and probably you will still be doing it for decades. So what is the real impact that you want to have on the sales world?
Wow. I would love to be contributing to creating this next generation of sellers to go on and be successful, to have the fun, the freedom, and the financial rewards that I have experienced as a salesperson. And that they would be making great impact, not just for their own bottom line and their own income, but they would know that they're in it for their customers' best interests. And they would sell with passion and be assertive because they see themselves as true consultants and value creators. And they own their skills at such a level that they go really hard after business because they know it's in the best interest of their customers and their prospects. And therefore, they have more success, which therefore gives them more fun, more freedom, and more financial reward. And if I've made a small impact in the sales community by the message I'm preaching and helping people do that, I'm really honored. And it's been so interesting the last few months. I've had some clients with salespeople who are younger than my children. It's been the first time where my children are now older than some of the newer salespeople. And I'm realizing, there's a generation gap here. But it's so much fun to preach the fundamentals to them. And I'm pointing them to new, younger, trendier people that are experts at today's tools. But I'm hitting them as hard as I can on those basic fundamentals that make people successful, particularly when it comes to developing new business.
Mic drop. Mic drop by Mike. Mike's mic drop. Mike, hey, it was a pleasure to finally meet you also face to face. Awesome that you can meet here, Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, in this great studio. Whenever you could stumble upon Vienna, we do
I need to get to Vienna. That is an easy invitation to say yes to.
We do a tour. We do a city tour for you. And yeah, really pleasure meeting you. Thanks for being on the show, and see you very soon.
No, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.